there's a specific part of my testimony that the idea of like giving witness to. So what I wanted to do is just like be a witness to some things that I've seen God do, and that's part of my testimony that has to do with the calling that God's placed on my life, and also kind of what we've been doing now. So it just seemed like this was a good fit and a good time to share that with you guys. So for those of you who know / don't know, I run a ministry called Created. And babe, can I turn off the music? You know what? I like actually do. Oh, sorry, I was not saying that. Okay, that thought he was So I run a ministry called Created, and this morning, part of my job with Created, I met with a woman in Nairobi, Kenya. I was not in Kenya this morning, it was a Zoom meeting. But she was working in a hospital, mainly with cancer patients, and her hope and her desire was to bring, to bring hope to the patients that she worked with. And she wanted to do that through using the arts and through using the arts as a process for God to come in and just like restore and give life. And so we were talking about that because she had just walked through the training program that Created has. She's an amazing person, and the creativity that came out of her, I just was consistently blown away. But I share that because that's what I did today. 8 years ago, this began. I was laying on a bunk bed and in Taylor's, like their cousin's house, and I was so frustrated and I was crying out to the Lord. I was enrolled in grad school because I thought maybe I was going to do art therapy. But I had 2 little kids at the time. I was so stressed out, and also I was like, I don't even want to do this. I had like a textbook this big, and it was like, I was laughing back there. I was like, I don't want to do this. This isn't how I want to do this. I didn't know what God wanted me to do. We've been in ministry for years, but I've been an artist my whole life. And I just felt like nothing was coming together. Those moments where you're like, nothing is coming together. Like, I want to do all these things. And I've heard from so many of you guys that same, like, I have this in me and I kind of like this and this is stirring in me, but it's just not coming together. And so I was laying around the bunk bed. It was probably 3 a.m. in the morning. And I was just going like, I don't know what you want me to do with this art thing. It doesn't work with the church. Like, no one knows what to do with me. I'm an artist, and they're like, can you paint a mural on the children's wall? No one knew what to do with an artist when you put Jesus with it. Yeah. And so I felt very out of place in my community. I felt like I don't know who to follow. I want somebody to just tell me how to do this, something. I don't even know what this is. So I heard the Lord in the whisper of the night say, Ashley, what do you want to do? Well, that's a frustrating thing when the Lord's like, what do you want to do? And you're like, I don't know. I just told you I don't know what I want to do. Yeah. But I felt this kind of second question, which is one that Gabrielle was asking of him, going, but what if there were no barriers? What if you could just, what would be amazing? What if there was no barriers to what you wanted to do? And there was something about that question and the Lord asking that just freed up this place of going, well, if there were no barriers, then what I'd really love to do is, and then it just came, and I was like, oh, I do have an idea. And I saw this little house in the woods, and I thought, well, I would really love it if people could just, if I could make an art studio and people can just come and I could just help them experience the healing of God through creating. And he was like, okay, let's do that. Yeah. And it just seems so simple. It wasn't simple, by the way. It was a very long, drawn out, hard process. But the idea was like, oh, I didn't realize how many barriers I put on God at first, because I was like, well, I don't know what to do in the context or what I already know and understand, because it wasn't a thing. Yeah. And so I was limiting it to art therapy, because like that's a program you go do, and maybe this kind of ministry because like somebody's done that before, and I totally was taking out the idea of God doing things that nobody has ever seen done before, or maybe he's done before, but I don't know anyone who's done it. So rewinding, that is how Created Ministry got started. And I felt like he was like, look at what you already have. So for us, we have the blessing of we have land, which is an insane blessing. That's a very rare thing to have. But it was like, okay, what do you do with that then? If this is what you have, then what do you do with what you have? Because not everyone has that. Other people have these things. You have land. So we built an art studio on it. Took a long time and a lot of hard labor for Taylor. And at the time, I was extremely pregnant with Esther as we were finishing up. The Lord prophesied that I would have twins. And I was like, no, there's one child in there. But the very first session, public session that I had, so when I say public session, we built the studio having no idea what I was doing. Didn't know what the ministry was, didn't know how to do art ministry. We just built it, hoping that this was a thing. Spent all of our savings to it. Was like, okay. The very first session that I said, okay, can you guys come in? It was called Pray for the Nations, and I had people come in and we were praying for the nations and using art, and I started having contractions, and she was born 3 weeks early. And so literally 2 things were birthed on the same night. And I was like, oh, there's the twins. And the beautiful part of that is it was literally praying for, contractions happened in praying for the nations. We didn't know that Esther was going to have Down syndrome. That's a story for another time, but I will say that first year of doing ministry was literally the first year of her life, and it was beyond difficult, and it was hard, and it was lonely, and it was frustrating, and I wanted to quit and give up. I was at the doctor, therapist, at least 3 times a week, and I kind of thought, God, what is wrong with you calling me to something at the same time is the hardest, at the time, the hardest thing that I'd ever done and ever walked through. Was like, why now? That doesn't even make sense that you would call me to something so hard at the same time as you're like, yes, let's start up this ministry. But we don't get to choose God's timing, and he had purposes in it. So I'm gonna fast forward. Basically did sessions for a couple of years in the studio, and then I just felt like people didn't have access to it. And then my heart started to burn for, if you don't have a car and can drive to the specific place in the woods, you can't come do art ministry. So then he began to teach me how to do it out of a box, literally a box. And so I could, wheel it and take it with me. And then in 2019, right before, so November 2019, the Lord put on my heart, sorry, that's not true. Before that, I started having people to ask, hey, I want to do that. That sounds cool. Will you train me to do it? And I thought, I don't really know what I'm doing, but you can have whatever I have, I'll show you. And the Lord began to show me there was actually a process to what I was doing. I didn't know it, I didn't see it at the time. I was just kind of showing up every session and being like, God, what do you want to do today? I love you too. And so as I realized, oh, this can be taught to other people. I wasn't doing this to teach it to other people, but when people started asking, I realized this can be shared. I had a lot of ideas for things I wanted to do art ministry wise, and you get these big dreams of change our city, and I'm gonna use the arts. And I'm not saying that I would love for that to happen, but I got really discouraged and felt like I'm not actually doing anything. I think I'm just bringing people in and they're painting. Is this actually doing anything? So that's when the Lord began to show me part of what you're supposed to do is to train other people. You're not going to necessarily be the one that's going to go into a hospital. You're not going to be necessarily the one that is, I don't know, I'm blanking on all of the amazing ideas that facilitators are doing right now, but my job was to begin training. And so there was a lot of discouragement along the way of I don't want to do this. I do want to do this. I don't know what I'm doing. I think I'm supposed to still keep doing what I'm doing. And so I started a training program in person and then online, and then a couple months later COVID hit. And so even in that, it was like, man, Lord, I wasn't planning to train people internationally. That's just what was needed. And that was just what came, and that's what was needed at the time. And I shared that with you guys because, it's okay, I don't mind. I share that with you because, thank you. Because I know for each of you, sometimes there's discouragement when you're going, one, I don't know how to put all these things together in one thing. Maybe you have all these desires you want to see happen and you're going, I don't know how this goes, you know? And sometimes God gives us all these intense dreams and desires at the beginning. And as I was on the Zoom call today with Sharon and Kenya, I was looking at her, and she is like bright-eyed with all these amazing ideas of things she can do with the patients that she has in the hospital. And I'm going, that's beautiful. I'm never going to be the one to do that, but you are. Okay. When I had the idea, when I got excited at one point about, like, I would love to see the arts in the hospital. I would love to see the arts here. I would love to see the arts here. And the Lord showing me, don't be discouraged because you're not the one doing it. For me, part of that looked like training other people, and they're going to be the ones to do it too. And so we don't always know what our part in the story or why He gives us certain like passions and desires for certain things. But first of all, I just wanted to encourage you that whatever you put on that paper, we all fully believe like there's purposes in it. We don't necessarily know what they are right now. I believe that there will be things that, you know, we see 10 years from now, 20 years from now, and you go, oh, I didn't see that one coming. So yeah, I just wanted to share that as an encouragement to you that you don't have to have it all figured out right now. And I was praying back there earlier, and I felt an intense, like, just weariness. I think, can you just raise your hand if you're weary or discouraged or have been? Okay. So when I was thinking, this last summer I've been beyond exhausted, and I haven't been doing anything with creative, to be honest. And I felt like a fraud. I was like training other people, and I'm like, I'm not even doing anything. I don't even know why you're listening to me right now. I don't feel like I have integrity to train anyone. I'm like not doing anything in art ministry. And then when I was on the Zoom meeting this morning, it was like, the Lord just kind of nudged me and went, I don't necessarily need you to do anything. Like, I was already doing something in her. Amen. You just get the blessing of talking to her and hearing what I've been doing. And it was actually really encouraging rather than discouraging. Like, so if you have been in the place where you just feel discouraged, like you don't see the fruit of it, or you don't know why you're doing what you're doing, or if you just felt like giving up, if you want to quit, I've been all those things in the last few months. I think multiple of us have been all those things in the last few months. God's still working, and it's not that He needs us. We just get the blessing of getting to see cool things happen every now and then. And to be part of His story. And so that's all. I just wanted to encourage you guys with that. And also don't limit God by what you've already seen happen, because He might call you to start something that doesn't exist.
Amen.
So,
Amen. I like that.
so, oh, question?